And the guys that I saw that had a really positive mental attitude used humor, in the face of fear, used humor in the face of adversity, used it to build up, the person to the left and right, were many of the ones who were standing tall at graduation.
All right, who's ready to get off their ass and execute? This is episode 64 of the Man of Mastery podcast with guest Brent Gleeson. First of all, I want to thank you guys again for being here. I know you're here because you and this show are all about massive action. We're here to learn from the best practices in human performance and human development. It's about embracing a growth mindset, which is perfect in having Brent back to the show. He's here to talk about his new book, Embrace the Suck, The Navy SEAL Way to an Extraordinary Life. Brent's given us the honor of a pre-read and a preview of this book by way of the podcast. It is pre-selling now. I would highly encourage you to order it now for release in December. And I will say this one is gold in itself. Additionally, the fact that Brent had teammate David Goggins write the foreword, that as a standalone is worth the cost of admission of picking this thing up. But today, as you can imagine, there's way too much to cover in just an hour of previewing this book with Brent. But I will tell you, this is Brent in a more raw form. No excuses, no BS. His humor comes through, his personality. We get to talk about his resilience. He's a massively successful guy. He is a hard charger and a high achiever by any measure, but that's just the outside looking in. We get to peel that back a little bit in this discussion and in this book and see what's behind success. You get to see a little bit more of the approach to that, the cost of that, the stress, having to reinvent a business, a growing family, right? All this in a pandemic, like all of us, facing those challenges. So in that, we learn from Brent and we talk about some tools. We talk about what it means to have a growth mindset. We talk about changing the narrative. He mentions humor. We talk about focus on what you can control. And, of course, we got to talk about family, right? What can we do to become resilient as parents, with children, as a family? And we also get to recognize and congratulate his wife, Nicole Gleeson, and talk about her startup, Veteran Wellness. So as we jump in to talk with Brent Gleeson about his newest book, Embrace the Suck, let me leave you with this quote from Brent. He says, "The most mentally and physically tough people I know constantly practice the fine art of building resilience, deliberately pounding away at their boundaries of their comfort zone in pursuit of their passions and causes greater than themselves. Simply put, they choose adversity over mediocrity and keep pushing forward." All right. Hey, returning to the show, I have Brent Gleeson, former Navy SEAL, entrepreneur, speaker, author, consultant, proud son of Texas. Brent, welcome back.
Thanks, brother. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too again. Hey, last time we talked about your first book, right? TakingPoint Leadership, Leading Through Change. Incredibly appropriate for these times. And look, I'm privileged to get a pre-read. Thank you very much for embracing the suck, the Navy SEAL way to an extraordinary life. So honored to have a conversation with you about this today. Thank you for stopping by. Yeah, look, so I read it over the weekend. I knew it was going to be an awesome book with your teammate David Goggins writing the foreword for you. In pages like 3 through 5, there are already more F-bombs than I think all of your last book. Which is
to be expected.
To be expected, which is awesome. Any book that mentions Roadhouse is going to be gold.
I had to find a way to work that in. Come on.
You got to do that. And I love, this is at least half humor, but for anybody, you're pre-selling the book now, right? But for anybody listening to this podcast and who's going to pick up the book, I think this is spot on as far as expectations, who the book's for and who the book isn't for, right? If you have goals for your life, right? If not, you're a loser and this book won't help you. So, if people want to tune out now, they can. But to me, this is great, right? The first book kind of aligns with your corporate consultancy. It's very, very polished, very professional. This one's a lot more raw. I feel like it's a lot more Brent Gleeson and more on the personal side. And I mean, look, we live in this consumerism world and social media. Everybody is success focused and event focused, but don't necessarily take time to see the process and the story behind the success. So you're pretty transparent here about some of your struggles along the path to get where you are. And I really appreciate that and the chance to read it. So that being said, do you mind just kind of letting the audience know what this book is, what it's about, why, and how it maybe compares, contrasts, and positions with the first one?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, the first book, Taking Point, the 10 fail-safe principles for leading through change, really is about dealing with change, adversity, and also leading a team or organization in any industry or any environment, really, through any type of significant transformation, whether that be an exit strategy or organizational objectives that need to be met. Whatever those change initiatives are, many organizations really fall short of meeting their intended objectives because people don't like change. And this book is much more about, again, that book was also pre-COVID. The principles are even more relevant now amidst the new personal and professional challenges of a global pandemic, civil, social, political unrest, economic uncertainty, fires, tidal waves, locusts, whatever else is coming our way over the next few months, we'll see. But nothing would surprise us at this point. And I really wanted to write a book about personal transformation. Now, many of the principles, as you have seen, although you don't know all the details of our leadership development programs and the organizational development we do with transforming organizations, but many of these principles in, like you said, a little bit more raw, gritty type of approach are actually drawn from a lot of our proprietary curriculum. Because any type of team that's trying to become high performance or transform the culture, it starts with people. That's why organizations are flawed, because they're made up of people like us. So the idea really was to, and I had never, I don't think, read any books in the self-help sort of personal transformation genre. And so I figured I should probably kind of look into that and do some research and see what's out there that's popular. I found Mark Manson, his books, the first one that you've probably read, The Subtle Art of Not Giving Up an F. I liked the sort of no-nonsense, creative, but counterintuitive approach to how he says, life's not always about turning lemons into lemonade. It's about, let's learn how to better digest the lemons in the first place and not, run from pain and run from suffering. But what can we learn from other cultures like the East, where suffering is seen as a critical piece of that path towards enlightenment or success or fulfillment and happiness? So the book is really about, of course, what can we draw from, maybe the world of SEAL training or combat. But, I kind of like Taking Point. I don't try to go too deep down that path because I wanted a really diverse storytelling approach. So they're not just my stories, they're other people's stories or historical figures or elite athletes, understanding how to develop resilience, how to develop the necessary grit to really dominate your battlefield and overcome obstacles and become stronger, leaning into adversity, and engage in better planning, limiting our choices so that we have less temptation that'll take us down the wrong path of time-wasting activities or even greater suffering, and doing all that to live a more meaningful, fulfilling, purpose-driven life. And going into this, of course, I had no idea 2020 would be 2020. I was like, hey, cool, it'll be a fun project. Like you've seen, it's there's humor, there's gritty seriousness in some of the stories, but also I did want it to be a tool of inspiration, and it was great when David agreed to do the foreword, because I knew what better way to kick off a book about resilience and mental fortitude than, from somebody like David. As you know, we were classmates and buds and teammates at SEAL Team 5, and then, of course, selfishly, now the timing of the book's release is perfect because it's December 22nd. Soon after the election, half the country will be really upset, maybe more than half the country. And everyone will have had a pretty crappy year. So, but in all seriousness, I do hope that because of the unique timing of the book, that it does provide a tool of inspiration. And unlike some of the other books in that sort of self-help genre, you don't find a lot of action-oriented content. Okay, great. What now? Is there a tool, a methodology? So each chapter has a mental model, as you saw, that readers can take from it what they want. But I wanted to at least provide each principle in each chapter with a bit more of the how. What are you going to do now? So it creates a guide, it creates a roadmap for personal transformation, and hopefully it achieves that goal for at least most of the people who read it.
Yeah, no, it's I love the typical Brent Gleeson form, right? Every chapter is not only anecdotal, entertaining, inspirational, but then there's a tool set. And you pulled from some Manson, and I think step 5 in one of your models is unfuck yourself, right? So you got that worked in there.
It leaves plenty of room for interpretation. I remember our instructors in training would be like, Gleeson, unfuck yourself. And I'd be like, great, what does that mean? What do I do now?
How do I do that exactly?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but you do get into a lot of the how, which is awesome. And I think you just positioned the why, which is, I think we swung too far in the pendulum one way in the West, thinking that comfort was our way to happiness, or comfort was our way to fulfillment. And quite the opposite, right? I think the human spirit thrives on adversity and wants hard things to do. And that tends to be the path. There's one of those sayings that life will only throw you what you're ready for. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but in hindsight, everybody's got that sort of hero's journey, that arc of tragedy or hardship or baggage or whatever they carry, and it becomes developmental unless you just stick your head in a hole, right?
Right.
Well, so I don't want to give away all the secret sauce of this thing, right? People need to buy it now on pre-sale and get real excited to read it in December. But let's talk about a few of the things and maybe some of the hows.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned Stephen Covey in here, so maybe we start with the end in mind. You kind of close out the book saying we're all going to die, so get off your ass and execute. But part of that was start with the end in mind, right? What do you want to look back on in your life and not regret? Or I think too many people meander through without design, without a vision. So what's your approach to helping people figure out their purpose, their vision?
Absolutely. And we've all been guilty of that, of, losing focus on what we're trying to accomplish, or just kind of, falling back into that more of a meander as opposed to violent execution. But then you realize over time that, the concept of that to me is terrifying, because life is short. And especially, having known a lot of friends and teammates whose lives were cut short doing what they love, but cut short very early. Didn't have a chance to build a family or raise their children or achieve other goals. So thinking with the end in mind, whether you're an individual, a team, an organization, you have the opportunity to develop your own exit strategy and start managing that list of things you don't want to regret today, not tomorrow, but use the tool in the book. Make a list of things you don't want to regret when it comes to family, relationships, love, your children, spouse, career, hobbies, other types of accomplishment, giving back, all those things that, at least from my perspective, are important to a fulfilling life. But start managing that now, because then next thing you know, if you don't, 5 years goes by or 10 years goes by, and you're like, I can't really point to too many things that I'm really proud of, or too many things that I know I'm not going to regret, that I never took some calculated risk, or made that career shift that I'd always been talking about but too afraid to do, or got out of that relationship I should have gotten out of long times ago. All those types of things that we all hesitate on because of the fear of failure, or the fear of being uncomfortable, or getting out of our comfort zone. And so that's really what it's really all about, is learning to actively pursue the development of your own mental fortitude, actively pursue the ability to use pain as a pathway, actively pursue the initiative around reducing our choices so that we have less temptation, things that pull us down the wrong path, or the shiny objects of opportunity that we realize weren't really good opportunities in the first place. And then we start multitasking, and multitasking used to be thought of as, if you could multitask, you're killing it. Now we all realize that multitasking just means you're doing a bunch of stuff in a real half-assed way and not really getting a lot done. So you're the sort of, the jack of all trades, master of none. So those are just some of the basic principles in the book, but also then drawing on the lessons from we've learned from other people who've shown real grit and real mental fortitude, like my friend Jason Redman, SEAL Team 7, SEAL Team 10, and some of the stuff that he went through after being shot multiple times with a large caliber machine gun in the face, neck, chest, and arms, and what he's done with his career, what he's done to use that to inspire other people, not wallow in his own misery, but turn it around and say, no, life is great. Like, this is like, I want to teach other people how to be inspired and how to not engage in time wasting activities of the why me, why now, but of turning adversity into opportunity and having a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset.
Yeah, mindset really permeates this whole thing. I like the, make a list, and no regrets was to me, kind of a simple but brilliant way to approach it. A lot of times I find you sit and ask somebody, well, what are your core values? Or, what are your passions? What do you love to do? Gosh, like I don't know. But if you start going, what do you not like to do? Well, I don't like to sit in a chair in an office all day, or,
right.
I don't want to be around this kind of person. So no regrets. I really like that approach to, okay, what do I not want life to look like? I could start with that.
Right.
And then I could springboard from there to, well, if I designed it, what would it look like? What would I want people to say about me when I'm gone?
Right. And just, you mentioned values, and I spent a chapter focusing on that because, a lot of times we don't think about what our true core values are. What are our guiding principles? What are the supporting behaviors we want to measure our own performance against? What are the accountability mechanisms we can put in place in our own lives to ensure that we have the ability to hold ourselves accountable towards living a life that we want to actively design, as opposed to just move through life not realizing what we really care about? Because if you don't have that as a foundation, we do this with our consulting clients. If you don't have a really well thought out social contract and core values that are meaningful and authentic and documented supporting behaviors and your accountabilities in place, then how are you making decisions? How are you deciding what clients to partner with, what employees to hire, what other types of strategic initiatives to engage in if you don't have those foundational pieces? The answer is you're flying blind, so to speak. And you can get to a certain level as an organization that way, or as an individual that way. But at some point, without those lane markers, so to speak, you will deviate down a path that you don't want to be on. And that list of regrets will start to build back up as opposed to diminish. So it's also really about taking some of those strategic planning methodologies for your life, and having your own personal charter, your own personal values manifesto that can be your guiding light and your beacon, especially when times are tough. It's easy to fly through life when revenue's flowing in and your finances look good, your relationship is amazing, your children are killing it in school. But when things aren't going so great, then what are you going to fall back on to guide you through the murky waters of uncertainty?
Yeah, a lot of us have sports backgrounds, right? You were a rugby guy. Rugby and hockey, I think, are the craziest friends I've ever had. But as crazy as it may get, right? You've got boundaries on a field, you've got line markers, you've got refs, and you've got rules that give you those guideposts to how are we going to play the game? How do I know if I'm making progress? How do I know if I'm succeeding?
Right.
Same thing in life. And there's that mindset shift, but we've still got to know sort of what our construct is. And I really like the point about the accountability and the team around you. I don't know much about Jason Redman. I've seen a little bit of his story, but I got the chance to hear a speech last week from Dan Knassen. You familiar with him at all? Mm-hmm. The guy lost both legs, stepping on an IED in Afghanistan, and he goes through the story, particularly the story of rescue and recovery. And the way he wraps it up is he says, the only conclusion I can logically come to is how incredibly lucky and fortunate I am. Like, what an amazing outlook.
Yeah, Jason, one last piece on that was his story kind of physical and mental recovery began, of course, when he was at the Naval Hospital Bethesda, when he became frustrated by his family and friends and teammates coming in and crying over his wounds and what a horrible turn of events, and because he was very, very badly injured, and shot through the face, almost severed his left arm, shot in the neck and chest, and the fact that he's alive is incredible. And when when the gunfight was over and they finally convinced air support to drop ordnance danger close after being told no 3 times, his teammates started dragging him to the medevac helicopter, and he said it hurt so bad, he was like, "Get off me, I'll walk." And so he walked unassisted to the medevac helicopter. And he was frustrated in the hospital because of the mindset of people coming in there. And so he wrote a big red piece of poster board and wrote a sign or note on the poster board and hung it as a sign on the door. And essentially it said, to all those who enter here, if you're coming here to feel sorry for my wounds or for this turn of events, go elsewhere. This is a room of rapid rebirth, recovery, of fun, of happiness. And basically, if you can't handle that, just stay out. Signed the management. And it caught the attention of the then president, George Bush. He was invited to the White House. And he's been through many, many surgeries, and as you can imagine, but he's used that as a stepping stone towards success in entrepreneurship in the speaking world. He's a 2 times best-selling author, and sharing his overcome philosophies around leadership and resilience and high performance with the world. And so really another great example of someone who takes a horribly catastrophic event, again, doing something he loves, there's no regrets whatsoever, but and turning it into something incredibly meaningful, not for himself, but for other people. That's another thing I touch on in the book, is the massive value in volunteerism and in giving back and taking maybe some of the struggles that you've been through as a person and using that not to boost yourself up necessarily. Obviously, there's certain things that might impact your career or what endeavors you pursue, but making sure to give back, to mentor, to engage in philanthropic activities or other types of activities that can inspire others to hopefully navigate their own adversity in their lives.
Right. Yeah. You touch on the service element of it, and again, kind of go back to fulfillment, right? Yeah, a couple of things struck me there in what you were just saying. I mean, you had a chance to serve with heroes, some of whom are still around, and some, as you say, now reside in Valhalla. Mm-hmm. And even men like yourself have paid an incredible price. But one of the things that struck me as I read the book, I think you speak about being common and common people training to do uncommon things or being able to accomplish uncommon things. I'm sure you have the occasional, absolutely rock star athlete that blasts through the training and qualification you guys do, but there are many who fail. Yeah. And it reminded me, I don't know if you ever had a chance to read The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. He talks about the holy shit effect. So of course, occasionally you have the genetic freak, but most of the time you have this, you have amazing things come out of places that you never expected. Yeah. And there's some principles of that. He studied it and he came up with, so part of it is having that mentor or that teacher. Part of it is having somebody who led the way and inspired you. And then part of it is doing hard work and doing it in an intentional manner, kind of the perfect practice sort of concept, putting the reps in.
Yeah. I talked about that intentional practice. And as you saw, there's some behavioral science research and psychology research in the book, but talking about, for example, when researchers have studied people who have achieved high levels of success, or the term I use is expertise, because success is obviously subjective. It means whatever, something different to every person. But when it comes to expertise, to a specific trade, a craft, sport, whatever, it takes a lot longer, but it's also, there are several factors. One is those people had an extremely high level of support from friends and family during their most developmental years. The other one was that they had unemotional coaches and mentors that not only prepared them for what they needed to accomplish in the moment, but prepared them for the next level of performance. And then the third was that they practiced deliberately. Not just practice, but engage in deliberate practice that's very strategic and meaningful. You don't just become a world-class ultra marathon runner by one day deciding to go run 100 miles. Oh wait, yeah, you can actually. One person did. But those people typically practice very, very, very intelligently and with deliberate purpose and with a strategy with every single thing they do. And I think a lot of us just don't do that. And you see that. That's what's really fascinating about having been blessed to go through the experience of SEAL training and qualification, and then of course serving amongst some of the most amazing people I've ever met, was that it's such a level playing field. It's the most fascinating experiment of mind and body that you'll ever see, I think, at least that I'll see in my lifetime. Because like you said, sure, we have star athletes, and when I mentor the young men that I do into the program, I focus on coaching them on not just deliberate practice, but maintaining focus on what's within their control and within their sphere of influence in their preparation. Not worrying about the potential for failure, not worrying about all those elements that'll be wildly out of their control once they're at buds, and focusing on their preparation, their preparedness, and what they're not going to leave to chance. One of those, of course, being your physical preparedness and your mental preparedness. And as most of us know, the more you push yourself and develop physically, you're building mental resilience and mental fortitude and the ability to maintain focus on a task and to push the boundaries of your comfort zone on a regular basis. And so that's what I coach them to do. But then when you get there, there's going to be all these other external factors and even internal factors of things, because you're being put through a crucible that has experiences that you could have never replicated in your preparation. So that's when you really kind of see what you're made of. And also just the ability. And one of the things I found most interesting, to boil it down in its simplest form, is obviously certain levels of resilience and grit, but you develop that as well going through that from day one, but also the ability to maintain a positive mental attitude. And I don't mean like happy self-talk and all that nonsense, but literally being able to laugh through the most horrible parts of the training where you're like, this couldn't possibly get any worse. And then it does. And you're like, oh my God, that's hilarious. This is so awful. And the guys that I saw that had a really positive mental attitude used humor, in the face of fear, used humor in the face of adversity, used it to build up, the person to the left and right, were many of the ones who were standing tall at graduation. Whereas the other people who were clinging too hard and were too afraid to fail, so they tried to stay kind of in the middle of the pack. We call that the gray man. It never works as a strategy anyways. Don't notice me, I'm just I'm in the middle. Those were the people that were able to successfully navigate that course. And of course, it's not for everybody, but there are, again, that's why I touch on some of that in the book, because there are really fascinating learnings of, around emotional intelligence, around your cognitive ability to push through physical and emotional pain, and really kind of eat the elephant one bite at a time, as we say. Don't worry about tomorrow's evolution, focus on today's evolution, and passing that, or getting a good time on the run, or getting a great time on the swim, or increasing your obstacle course time, or getting an A on the test, because you still have to make the grade academically as well, which adds another layer of anxiety. Because after a long day of pain and suffering, you got to go home and study.
Of course you do.
Learn, So it's really an interesting culmination of physical, mental, cognitive, and emotional attributes that you have to actively develop while you're on the battlefield to continue to build that type of resilience. And there's some interesting things in there that we can learn just applying in our own civilian life on how to navigate stress at work, or anxiety, or if you lose your job, or the financial stress of a global pandemic. What are hypothetically, right? So yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one of the things that really fascinates me about the opportunity to speak to guys like you and your background, and learn from, be it Navy SEALs, or I had a chance to do a 24-hour ride along with the local fire department here. And, I'll have people ask me like, oh, so what's the deal? Now you want to be in the fire service, or, hey, you went and did this Crucible event with these crazy Navy SEALs. Now you want to be a Navy SEAL. No, the point is, there's just a richness there to take away, and we can apply it in so many different ways as parents, in the workplace, in our relationships. One of the things that Daniel Coyle in his research and what he cited in his book was, so we move away from some of the physical, just to take an example of somewhere else to apply it, and that deliberate practice. He talks about musicians. So I'm not a musician, but he talks about taking the sheet music for number one, push your boundaries. Right. Yeah. Be willing to try to learn to play something that's not in your comfort zone. Right? Yeah. Be willing to fail. And then they were, eating the elephant one bite at a time. They would just take one line of the entire music, and just practice those notes over and over and over again to perfection for that one particular piece, and then start putting it together and layer it on and take it slow.
And it's interesting you mentioned that, because the research I did of other people's research was typically done in those areas are done with musicians, athletes, artists. So a lot of times those categories, because it is interesting. I was a musician growing up. I played the drums, and was in the jazz band in high school. Maybe that doesn't seem like what I would have done in high school. I swam, but I was also in that jazz band nerd. So, but it's true. I mean, you had to really develop. You have to really get outside your comfort zone and practice that song that's really complex and terrifying because you don't want to suck at it, but do it anyway, and then move the goalpost and do it again. And so those very intentional, iterative approaches to development, whether it be in your career, or your personal life, or a hobby. And one of the things we teach is motivation theory in our leadership development programs, mainly so that leaders of people can understand what does actually motivate people on their team. And oftentimes it's not what we think. Things like monetary reward will only take you so far. There's a bell curve there where it comes down to mastery. So the desire for us to master something that we're passionate about, some type of skill or athletic feat or musical instrument. We just, as humans, we do enjoy becoming good at something. Not everybody, I guess, but most people do. And then the other is autonomy. So the ability to have freedom in your choices towards achieving a specific goal. And, so those are just some of the interesting principles that, around motivation theory, what motivates us, what motivates others. And then the third is passion. So, and I really kind of try to drill that into the book as well, is understanding what are you really actually passionate about? You mentioned that at the beginning of the call. And so it's a hard question to answer, because it should take some thought. And, some people have figured it out, or will tell you with laser focus, and others either haven't thought about it much, or it's evolved over time, what we're passionate about. And everybody knows that to really excel at something, whether your work life, your career, your professional life, your personal life, without passion and emotional connectivity to what you're trying to accomplish, you can only go so far. That's one of the things that we've learned from our research in studying the students that come through the BUDS program and then going through advanced training, because we do have to try to continue to graduate more SEALs, and so we have to put better leads in the top of the funnel, so to speak, to use a sales terminology, because training is never going to get easier. So we've done a lot of research on the emotional, cognitive, and mental and physical attributes of students more likely to successfully navigate the course. And the data isn't what you might expect. It really falls into those less measurable pools around natural resilience and passion, a deep, deep passion to not just serve in the military, but to serve as a naval special warfare operator, meaning this is the only thing I want to do. I'm passionately connected. I've been studying this for years, and there is no other course of action. So that connectivity, that emotional connectivity, is what connects us to the long-term vision. Grit's not about these, pushing hard to achieve these short-term gains, but the long-term grind towards a loftier goal, a longer-term vision. So that's, and that applies in any walk of life.
That makes sense to me. Just as you're talking about passion and, having that longer term vision, back to the sort of end of the book and what do you want your life to look like at its end, whenever that may come for each of us, that question, along with passion and purpose, sometimes it's tough for people to start to evolve through and chunk through.
Right.
I had a coach run me through an interesting exercise recently that he flipped it around, and he says, okay, take yourself right now and let's, close our eyes and imagine you met a 15-year-old version of yourself, or whatever it was, right? Right. What would you tell that version of yourself, right? So you could impart some wisdom.
It would take a long time.
That might take a while. Would you try to avoid the concussions and the shattered teeth? I don't know.
I'd probably punch him in the face first, and then sit him down for a very stern talk about life.
Yeah, and would they listen? Right? Maybe a teenage is a bad idea. You got kids, you know how this goes.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned like nobody goes out and runs an ultra marathon and becomes good at it day one, except maybe David Goggins. But even then, right? People don't necessarily pay attention to the fact the guy's going out and running 20 miles every day, or
Yeah.
his first ultra was not so great, right? I think it was at 75 miles or so. He sat down and his kidneys were failing and his shins were shattered.
Died of kidney failure. I mean,
he almost died.
Like, and just whether it's David Goggins or anybody, we like to, watch people's progression to success in social media, or talk about the stories of how much money they make or all the things they've accomplished. And we always seem to skip across the pain, the suffering, the failure, the rejection that they've experienced time and time again on that long, bumpy road towards their existing level of achievement. And they're still going through pain, suffering, sorrow, failure, even when they're up here in this upper echelon of what we might describe as high achievement. It's easy to skip past those pieces because, we don't want to, include that in ourselves. Well, I could never do that because that's, oh gosh, that sounds like it sucks real bad. And that's kind of his philosophy too, that, I touch on the book, is the intentionally do something that sucks every day. And I kind of break it down to, well, if you have a specific goal in mind, make a list of the things that you're going to have to overcome to achieve that goal. The things, not that are easy for you, but the things that make you very uncomfortable. And then intentionally practice those things on a much more regular basis so that those things become comfortable. And then you make a new list of other things that make you uncomfortable now, and intentionally practice those things. And then, of course, then your comfort zone continues to expand, and the things that used to make your stomach turn or give you deep anxiety aren't so bad anymore. For example, in my own journey towards continuing to try to be a student of leadership and be a better leader of people for my companies is, it's kind of ironic because sure, on the battlefield, I'll run towards the sound of gunfire, but I don't like having those difficult conversations with disgruntled employees or angry clients. I hate it. I will put it off. I'll delegate it. I will take it from today's to-do list and move it to tomorrow's to-do list, all the things you shouldn't do, instead of tackling it head on. My wife gives me crap about this all the time. She's like, why are you not just tackling this right now? And then once you do, those things that make you uncomfortable, for me, let's say it's, gosh, I'm putting off that, I have to let that person go, or that client is pissed off and called me 3 times. Maybe I can figure out a way to have someone else talk to him. But most of the time when you get on the phone or deal with that uncomfortable situation head on, one, it's not usually as big a deal as you think. It wasn't as scary and painful as you think. And then you move past it. And then your stress goes away because you've tackled the problem, and you're a little more comfortable having tackled that problem. You're maybe a little more confident the next time that similar problem comes up, and you continue to develop mentally and expand that growth mindset, as opposed to being fearful of the things that make us uncomfortable that are inevitable, either in life or for the pursuit of a specific goal we are passionate about.
Yeah, those fears are almost always scarier than we, in our mind, in our imagination, than in reality.
Yeah.
And hey, if we look at Brent Gleeson on Instagram, right, it's hanging out in Rancho Santa Fe and having a nice date night or playing with the kids, the dog, or whatever, right? But you pull back the kimono a bit here in the book, right? I've seen you speak live, and it's a really engaging and an amazing talk. Talk about your pet monkey in Africa. But hey, then in the book, you talk about the first time you go on stage, and the feedback was it sucked. You talk about, you don't mention in the speech that monkey didn't make it. You talk about your own failures in there, so we can see, hey, we all have to put in the reps. We've all got to put in the work. Nobody's got a perfect life.
And not everybody, is super resilient because they came from a life of extreme suffering or poverty or abuse or racism or things like that. And some are. Some of us have, maybe a little bit more of a normal journey through childhood, or more privileged maybe than other people. But at the same time, like you said, everybody, from the day we're born to the day we go over the Great Divide, will experience suffering, will experience pain, failures, setbacks, obstacles, both in our personal and professional life, divorce, single parenting. Just again,
hypothetically,
I'm not talking about me, but I'm just saying, stuff that really, really, really sucks. But then it makes you stronger, and it helps you develop new relationships and new strategies for how you're going to deal with it next time. I mean, that's kind of the bedrock of resilience, is not being able to adapt, amidst the uncertainty and the VUCA environments that we're in right now, but continually prepare ourselves to deal with the change and adversity, uncertainty that will come tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, we're all so fortunate, right? And certainly around these parts, almost everyone. But I got interviewed on a podcast called Unrelenting Humans, and most of the guests are, multiple amputee athletes and just incredible humans and performers. And the host asked me about hardship, and I'm going like, what can I really tell you? And I ended up, everybody's got something. I told her a story of a couple ruptured lumbar discs, and it's a pretty painful process and recovery. And she was going like, "Oh my God, that is it's ridiculous." And I'm like, it was just a blip for me, right? Again, so fortunate, but we've all got things to build off of, and I really appreciate that you put some of that in there. In terms of embracing the suck every day, and maybe some of the ways to go about that. So first of all, and different ways to go about it. How are you embracing the suck right now personally? What's that look like for you?
It's been an interesting year. But again, it's been an interesting year, but it's another one of those things. If you kind of change the narrative around what adversity is and what you're going to do about it, then you can move towards saying, good, what else you got for me, life? Yeah. And I say that in being completely serious. When March came around, and being someone in the world of speaking at live events and doing a lot of on-site, face-to-face work with executives in large organizations, and you can imagine, how challenging it's been and how much we and similar organizations have had to intentionally pivot. I know we've used that word a lot this year so far, but I'm going to use it again because it's appropriate. But if you think too about some of the adversity driven by COVID and some of the offshoot challenges that organizations are facing or families are facing, are forcing reinvention and much more rapid regrowth and reinvention than we're usually used to or even willing to do. For example, digital transformation in an organization usually takes years to embrace new technology, new ways of doing things, new standard operating procedures to eventually become more efficient, but it's very uncomfortable. Oftentimes it fails. Well, a lot of organizations, mine included, have had to really lean into digital transformation just to survive. And usually the new practices have to come first before mindsets shift. So for example, I was looking at some interesting data in the speaking and consulting world, and in April and May, most organizations and people providing the services were not interested in doing virtual events, not interested in doing virtual training, virtual consulting. Even with some of our existing multi-year clients, we're like, let's, because they get so much out of the interactivity with our team and the social connection, and we make it fun, that we're like, it's just, let's not do it. And then a couple months later, people are like, yeah, we got to do it. We can't do nothing. We can't not develop our teams. We can't not engage in employee engagement strategies. And so the adoption has been rapid to shift towards doing more things like this, where we're doing it virtually. That's okay. And there's a lot of great benefits to it. The cost benefit, the decrease in the carbon footprint, and selfishly, I wanted to get off the road anyway and start working more on the business as opposed to in the business. And here we are, brother. Who knew? It just took a little global pandemic to get that needle moving.
That's all it took. Yeah.
I told my wife that. I'm like, hey, you wanted me home more. Here I am. And she's like, when's your next trip?
Yeah. I have the same conversation pretty often. I had somebody ask me earlier this morning, how are you doing through all this? And honestly, I have a hard time thinking back and thinking what's tough. Now, maybe it's just because I've managed to stay busy, and I'm grateful for that. It's a change for my son, going through remote learning. It's a slowdown for my wife's business, but we've changed the narrative. We get to sit down and have family dinners. We get to have conversations. We get to play board games. There are so many things we get to do. I get to spend more time training with my son.
Right.
Do we have Spartan races this year? No, but we built obstacles in the backyard and we're practicing new skills. Right.
Right. And that's the same thing. Like, we're spending more time with family. It's been so great, and then so much time that I realized, gosh, I was really gone a lot, all the time. And it wasn't, I knew that, and there was a strategy in place regardless this year to continue to build the team and deploy those team members and be more selective in what speaking engagements I do, and really trying to only use that as a sales and business development strategy, because that's where most of our client relationships begin. But then all these other things happened, and that's forced it to transform a lot faster. But then it gives you the opportunity to rethink your business, for example, recapitalize the business, restructure debt, look at all the waste. You're like, business is good, whatever. I'll look at the financials later. And then you're looking at them, you're like, oh my God, we waste money on so much stuff. And being more intentionally thoughtful in where we invest our time, our resources, how we spend our time, how our employees spend their time. And it's been for us, for example, it's been a great learning experience internally as a consulting organization, because we've had to reinvent ourselves as well. So we've learned so much from this. And, my wife and I have learned so much, about our children, about our own personal finances and budgets and things we want and things we don't want, to waste time and money on. So again, there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of benefit that comes from adversity and being forced to navigate, being forced to reinvent, and being forced to really reassess, to make sure that this has changed my perspective on a lot of things, and maybe in a great and positive and permanent way. I mean, this COVID-19 is going to change, how organizations, for example, think about their workspace needs, how they think about their workforce in general, how they adopt remote learning. Because a lot of organizations are, as we know, the large ones have, like the Googles of the world, have said, we're going to, through 2021, indefinitely, we'll see. And other organizations, maybe sometimes smaller ones, are going to get rid of their expensive office space. Right. Our landlord's not listening right now, but we're working remote. I go to the office a few times a week, but we don't need it. So again, a lot of interesting things will come out of this that'll be permanent adjustments, improvements in people's personal and professional lives. But that's a good thing.
It's a good thing. Yeah. One of the things that sticks with me is even just, doing Zoom calls for work, and how that on the surface, it seems impersonal, but as opposed to face, but the more we've relaxed into it, I asked you, hey, are we going business formal today? Or are we embracing the suck? And you said, hell no. And I'm
wearing shorts with monkeys on them. Like, seriously. So I'm not going to show them to you, but
previously you'd have had the shirt up top, at least the golf shirt, and the business on top and party on the bottom. But now, people got kids running through the background, and we kind of get to know each other as humans a little bit more. It's okay.
Yeah. It maybe even in more of a casual way now than in person. Because even in person, we're like, oh, well, it'd be very formal. But with this, it's almost forced a relaxed approach to just communication in general. Like a lot of the Zoom calls I have with new potential clients, I'm like, oh, the first call is going to be a video call? It's like, oh, okay. It's a little uncomfortable, but you get to know the person. And it's whereas it used to be old school conference calls all the time. I will say not every call has to be a video Zoom call. Not every single one.
I have had clients going like, hey, are you turning on your camera today? No, I haven't had a haircut in 6 months. I'm not turning on my camera.
Exactly.
What about, as a father, how can we do this together with our kids, embrace the suck together, create that narrative and that mindset together?
I've been asked that quite a bit, especially just as it relates to this current environment, not just how it applies to leading and managing a team, but how can we apply some of those same principles to our families? And one is really about, it sounds a bit cliche, but meaningful communication, setting the right expectations, having, if we do this for high performing teams, like having a set of core values and guiding principles, a team charter, a social contract, why would we not do that for our families and for our meaningful relationships? And talking about those things that will help develop our children into, responsible, caring, loving, and resilient young people. Well, now's a great time to start. I mentioned that in the book. It's like, when is it too early to start teaching our kids about resilience? The whole everybody gets a trophy and kind of stuff. Everybody does get a trophy, but
as I sit in front of my participation medals, as I like to call them.
That's right. I love me, Walt. Get it right.
That's right. I did finally win a Spartan race this year in the virtual world. They started doing virtual Spartans. Huh. So I won a ultra, so a 50-kilometer age group Spartan, because I was the only one that entered. So I'm first of one. But hey, sometimes I crushed it. Sometimes you just gotta step up to the start line and see what happens.
But then in theory, you were the first, but you were also the last.
That's correct.
Simultaneously. So
correct.
Just so we're clear.
Just so we're clear. Yeah, absolutely. I got to send you. I'll send you a video offline of. So my son is 12. We have one child. He's 12. So my wife and I took him to a 3-day event this past weekend, and he loves to live in the physical realm as boys and men we often do, and so it was amazing in 3 days to see where he thrived in his comfort zone and was able to lead others. And then areas where he was way outside his comfort zone and the team had to rally around him. So at one extreme on Friday, we were out doing air quotes beach games with some guys you may know who were getting us all wet and sandy.
Nice.
And so at one point they called my son up front to lead the team in 20 perfectly synchronized burpees in the surf zone. And awesome. he's just killing it. The video is awesome. Gives me chills. At the other end of the spectrum on Sunday, we had to do an ice bath, and that was pretty far outside of his comfort zone. So that one, that was a big learning experience for him, but he's taken it away.
I'm doing something similar with our oldest, Tyler, who's 14, put on by Bedros Keuilian. He's you probably follow him on Instagram or social media. He's the CEO of Fit Body Boot Camp.
Okay.
But really inspirational, super smart entrepreneur, great leader. He's got a best-selling book called Man Up that's been out a couple years as well. But it's called the Squire event. It's a full day Saturday thing. It's not quite. I don't think it's quite as physically intense as what I know you're talking about. But it's great to take time with each of our children, to do those types of activities because they're going to remember them for the rest of their life. But also give them the opportunity to push their comfort zone and or even get emotional or realize, where their boundaries currently are. And once then you can push them.
Right. Or get out there and
not your children,
boundaries and children. And fail, right? Or a different type of, it's not failure. It's in fact a strength rather than weakness. The second night out there, we did about a 4-hour weighted ruck on the beach.
Yeah.
Turned out to be 4 hours. We're going to ruck until we're done. Right. And so the pack didn't fit him. So it was like, well, can we switch packs? Does that work? Or are we going to take turns carrying his pack? And then he had a twisted ankle from a Ninja Warrior competition. He twisted it again on some rocks. So, hey, you need help. You need to learn to ask for help. Call Medic Charlie. We're going to wrap your ankle. It's okay. Right. The team is going to stop while you ask for help and we get you help.
Right.
And that's something that a lot of us have a hard time with, asking for help, especially in team settings.
Well, because we think that, toughness or mental fortitude is all about grinding it out on your own, which is absolutely not the case at all. Some of the most resilient people I know, they are because they know when to ask. They know when they're beyond their current capability. So that's a great point.
Yeah, no, you talk about areas of expertise in the work world, right? We can't all know everything. We must be a team. I guess one thing I want to ask, and I want to make sure we have time to talk about veteran wellness, but where does your practice go with the book? So I think the first book seems very closely aligned to your consulting practice. This book, which is a little more focused on, you said as people, right? Focused on, well, to put it this way, there's an American philosopher, I was just talking to a PhD about this concept of 3 spheres, the I, we, and it. Mm-hmm. So as we progress in our careers, we get good at things the company needs. And then we become even better as we learn we encapsulate the we learn teams, we lead teams. Right. There's that scale and leverage model. But the difference between the good, great, and extraordinary leaders is you hit this plateau and then you realize, whoa, it's a false summit. I've got to work on myself to get better at everything else.
Yeah.
which is where I think a lot of us stray away from the self-help category. But in reality, at some point, we really got to better and fix ourselves
Well,
to get to that next level.
we can't really excel in our professional life just like we try in our personal life, because there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's really more of a work-life integration. And the best leaders out there are lifelong learners. They're never satisfied with the status quo. And so it's not always about, for example, reading the technical business books or leadership books and things, how to change your culture, but also, how do I change me? Because in a lot of times organizations that have plateaued, it's plateaued because this guy's plateaued. And I no longer have the appropriate level of innovation. And, it's that whole, like Marshall Goldsmith's, what got you here won't get you there. The principles in that book apply to an organization, a team, or a person. Our beliefs, our mindset, our behaviors, our practices that take us to a certain level of personal, professional success or fulfillment or happiness, aren't going to be the same ones that'll get you over that inevitable plateau. Because you see that in research on organizations. All organizations that continue to grow steadily, regardless of the speed, hit these inevitable growth plateaus, and they have to transform, they have to reinvent, and that requires most of the time the people, the leaders, having to transform, grow, and reinvent. So it really hopefully will play nicely with the people practices side of our teaching as they relate to developing ourselves as leaders of ourselves and leaders of others. How to develop, it's hard to develop resilience in a team if I can't develop it into myself first. How do we motivate ourselves and others? How do we develop ourselves and others? And one of the biggest, most important engagement strategies I've seen in our practices is when a team sees the leader engaging in constant personal growth, it inspires them to engage in personal and professional growth. So when we go through things like 360 reviews and psychometric assessments and developmental action planning, coaching, mentoring, this, it inspires the team to continue to follow that leader, but also it inspires them to engage in their own, proactively engage in their own development, because that's one of the things that inspire them to stick with that team, that organization, or to continue to follow that person. So, yeah, I think it'll play nicely with the general practice around the leaders that we develop and the teams we develop, but in also like a fun, kind of gritty, raw way with a couple F-bombs.
Yeah, a couple F-bombs. Maybe goes back to building a more human relationship. And it does look like, checked out your website, since the last time I looked at it, it looks like you've added some team members that maybe have some expertise in human development and potential.
Yeah, I'm like the only person without a PhD. I gotta get to work. I gotta get to work on that.
Get to work on that. It looks like you've been, just kind of hanging around for months. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or you've reinvented a couple businesses and started a new one. So let's talk about veteran wellness. I have San Diego's big military and veteran town, yep. Right? You mentioned eight concussions in the book, and I don't know if that was just from rugby or
actually mostly rugby,
or from being a jazz musician or from being a breacher. But I've got friends with PTS and TBI, and yep. The gravity of it sunk in when I read in your book that oftentimes you have trouble sleeping more than half an hour at a time.
Well, it really, and again, my compared to many, my contribution to these conflicts pales in comparison, but at the same time, I've had some pretty kinetic deployments with a lot of explosive breaches and things like that. But again, this whole concept is not about me. It's about looking at the data. We've been at war for 20 years. Veteran suicide is astronomical, like 20 plus a day. And people and guys from the teams losing their battle, and people are like, oh, special operators, or losing their battle with against mental illness and TBI. Yeah, absolutely. And so veteran wellness, in its simplest form, is a high quality line of CBD products. And we're not the only ones doing it. We're not reinventing the wheel, but we do give a portion of proceeds from every sale back to some various veteran and mental health, veteran related mental health initiatives. Obviously the product's for anybody, but the idea is that if you are interested in using more healthy, natural solutions to ease, insomnia or anxiety, strain, or even physical pain, then do it in a healthy way, maybe less self-medication with alcohol, God forbid, or other types of ways of self-medication that not just veterans, but that all of us sometimes engage in, whereas we could be finding healthier solutions. And the great thing is the products work, but and also the giving back piece. Just as you know, I've been on the executive board of the Seal Family Foundation for many, many years, and Nicole and I are both very passionate about supporting veterans and supporting our active duty men and women as well. So it was a project that was already kind of in the works, and then again, like we've talked about, a lot of the changes that have happened this year, and me coming off the road, and it does really open up some time. If you think about how much time you spend at the airport or on an airplane or in a hotel room where you think you're being productive, but you're not being nearly as productive as when you're jamming away in an office, for example. And so it really gave us the opportunity to accelerate the growth of that brand and launch it. And so we've done it in a pretty cost-effective way, but it's really starting to take off. And we're using. I owned a digital media company for many years, so we're using digital media, social media, paid media strategies to get it out there, and we'll see where it goes.
Nice. It's so I mean, sleep is a big thing, and from a health perspective, but it seems like the more people I talk to that are kind of aging, sleep becomes quite a challenge, and it's foundational to recovery, to weight control, to so many things, stress management.
Oh, yeah.
So is the product helping you with your sleep?
It has, and I, for many years I had been skeptical, and admittedly, this is more Nicole's project than mine, because I was like, I've got a business to build, or then came March and May, I've got a business to save. The narrative changed a little bit. So I was like, this is all you, hon. Like, go for it. And she did. She's always loved entrepreneurship. She was in corporate America for almost a decade, working in the beverage industry for Miller Coors predominantly. And so she's got a lot of experience on the corporate side, but has also, this is really her startup, essentially. So, I mean, she worked with the team to build the brand, the design concepts, to find, the manufacturers and, potential distributors, and does all the shipping and does all the billing, and, she does everything really. I can obviously play the role of veteran, or the role of, thought leader in certain aspects of that, but it's really been all her. So she's really done a great job in developing it to where we are now. We'll probably go out and raise capital so we can really gain some good market share, and use the funds going towards more aggressive marketing and building a small headcount around it. But yeah, she's done a phenomenal job, and again, we were able, just like a lot of entrepreneurs do, is not only seeing a white space, but also seeing the timing of the opportunity, and when you can actually invest the appropriate amount of time to launch a company, because it's hard. As you know, there's a lot of moving pieces, and especially with the stress of everything else going on this year, I'm surprised it went as well as it has. But we're trying to do it intelligently and thoughtfully, and make sure that it's the purpose is driven by not just the growing of a brand, but the real purpose behind why it exists.
Yeah, no, I love the mission and the service behind it. And hey, why not crank out a new company while you get ready to crank out another baby? So, congratulations to Nicole. That's amazing.
Yes.
I'm looking at I've got a roll-on CBD and arnica here.
Yep.
I think it's got some menthol in there. Yeah, it's got some menthol in there too. I mean, I'm 100% convinced that CBD is the world's best anti-inflammatory.
Yeah.
But it does seem to be. I mean, this is called Grandma's Secret. It's made here locally. It seems to be kind of a crowded space, maybe locally or regionally, but is it still sort of a blue ocean national?
Well, and that was one of my, just being a typical skeptical entrepreneur, that was one of my concerns, was that it was already a bit saturated. But we also know a lot of people in the cannabis space, in the CBD space. We were out there talking to venture capital firms, and the general consensus was that no, it's not saturated yet to the point of where it's just, barriers to entry are going to be too difficult. But even also this year, and even COVID-19 has weeded out a lot of businesses, unfortunately, but it's also weeded out newcomers to new industries and new spaces, or people that didn't really have a good business model, or don't even know how to run a business, or or just who really like cannabis and were like, we should start a company around CBD. There's some of that, as you can imagine, in that space. So it's really about just like a lot of our industries, it's really about the brand. It's about the purpose behind that brand message. And it's about differentiating. For us, it's about differentiating into a niche. That's what was really popular, both with other people in the space, venture capital firms, other potential angel investors, was our niche around the veteran focus. There's a couple other out there, but that just, kind of proves the importance of that model. But for us, it's, at least I'll speak for myself, in entrepreneurship, it's about going, long and deep down a specific niche into a path and doing it well, as opposed to broad, and trying to be everything for everybody. So that's kind of our approach to how we're developing this brand. And so far, so good. We'll see. But like we've talked about, there will be inevitable obstacles that we will pick.
Inevitably. It's it's veteran-wellness.com.
Veteran-wellness.com. Our Instagram is veteran.wellness. So yeah, check us out. But the important thing, like you said, is the products work. We believe in the products. We use the products. And it helps me, for example, in a lot of key areas, especially around, sleep, and even, the anxiety of, business or entrepreneurship. So, and some, like you said, the physical pain, the salves and the topicals work really well.
Legal, I think, in every state, can ship to any state.
I don't think every state. I think we're almost there yet, but yeah, there's a lot of the challenges. There are a lot of different types of restrictions, especially when you're using digital media to push products like this. So you really have to, and this is good for any type of brand or e-commerce strategy. You really have to build a good content funnel, which is important too, because you want to educate people about the importance of CBD. I mean, even the VA has tons of content about its benefits on va.org. So creating good content funnels and educating your audience and building that trust around what their actual benefits are, not just get on the bandwagon because you heard it's good, but what are the actual benefits? And so you can use it in an intelligent way.
Yeah, there's a ton of science there. What about active service members? Is CBD now allowed?
So as of, I think, a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, DOD did approve the use of just topicals, not ingestibles.
Okay.
I don't know the details around it, but it does show a shift in thinking around these types of products. And now it's a race to our death to try and get in there and grab some market share in those categories.
Right. No, I mean, there's huge potential there. And I've seen some of it, in the energy industry, when you're talking about, grid security and folks that are involved in the operational reliability of our, national asset, this power grid.
Right.
Drugs and drug testing and all that comes to bear. And so this is, similar to that of, hey, what is at my disposal to use safely in a manner that's still allowed.
Right. Yeah, of course. So again, it's about educating ourselves and then educating other people on its health benefits, but also, understanding, when and where the appropriate time to use any type of drug, so to speak. So.
Right. Yeah. And non-pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
Awesome. So veteran-wellness. The new book is pre-selling on Amazon. Embrace the Suck.
All retailers, it's easy to send people to Amazon. So just easy Google search Amazon, Brent Gleeson, Embrace the Suck. We've actually got a lot of pre-sales. There's a lot of good excitement around the book. Having David's involvement in the book has in all seriousness, created a lot of buzz just because of the mindset that he brings to, some of the principles that I share in there. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Admittedly, I read through your content in it, skipped the anecdotal stuff. So when I have time, I want to go back and read that. It is, I love it. It's super relatable on top of the first book. I mean, it's worth it. Even if you just tore out the first 10 pages to read the Goggins letter that he allowed you to publish. I mean, that in itself was amazing.
Yeah, that really happened. I was like,
real story.
It came in a text message. It kept going and going and going. I was like, I just copied and pasted it to my mentee, and he shared it with his whole class on Sunday before they started Hell Week.
That thing was gold. You start reading the foreword, and and then you get to that part, and it's like, okay, I think a ghostwriter took care of the rest of this, and then this is classic David Goggins, from what I can tell. But great work on this one, man. Thank you for putting it out. Like I said, I appreciate you letting me have a read on it and getting into some of the tools and sharing a few of the things from it. I want people to order it and read it and learn from it. But I didn't want to give too much away. So hopefully we'll get a chance to revisit it.
I'll send you I've always said this. I don't like sending galleys out. That's just part of the process because they're so unfinished in their version. So I will send you a finished signed copy of the book about a month before it publishes, because I did a ton of editing after what you've read, but you get the idea.
Oh, no, I super appreciate it. I was looking at the content, table of contents, like page 00000. But no, love to take a look at the finished product and, talk again end of the year, early next year when we can awesome. Get into a little bit more of the grit.
Sounds good, brother.
Thank you again. Appreciate the time. Always great to talk. Thanks, Brent.
You too, buddy.
All right. Thank you again to Brent for the book, the read, the time, and the conversation. This is episode 64. So for all the links you're going to need and for the show notes for this episode, get out to manofmastery.com/064. manofmastery.com/064. So links, of course, to pre-order Embrace the Suck, the Navy SEAL Way to an Extraordinary Life, to Veteran Wellness. Try out Brent and Nicole's new line of CBD, relaxation, and sleep aid products. And, of course, links to his Inc. and Forbes articles, TakingPoint Leadership, and their organization and services. All right, and thank you again for tuning in. So last time I had promised you a conversation with and about unrelenting humans. That one will be out next time. This one bumped up to align with Brent's pre-read. So next time on The Man of Mastery, Unrelenting Humans.